When Pro Football Focus published their latest quarterback rankings and shoved Caleb Williams all the way down to number 13, they were not offering an objective film breakdown. They were peddling pure, unadulterated copium. Leaving a sophomore prodigy who engineered 7 fourth-quarter comebacks and racked up nearly 4,000 yards outside the top 10 isn't just an oversight. It's a desperate refusal to admit the national media got him dead wrong. Critics will point to his low raw completion percentage and pretend he's an inaccurate, system-dependent passer, but the actual tape tells a terrifyingly different story for the rest of the NFL. When you strip away the contextual noise and analyze his elite in-rhythm EPA and ice-cold fourth-quarter magic, his Year 2 numbers don't just hold up against the league's top 10, they utterly humiliate them. Defensive coordinators across the country already treat him like an unguardable cheat code, yet mainstream evaluators are still clinging to outdated draft-bust narratives to protect their own egos. In this video, we are pulling back the curtain on the media's agenda, exposing why Ben Johnson's system is actually unleashing a monster and proving precisely why Caleb Williams is already an undisputed top 10 quarterback in football today. Every single offseason, the national sports media embarks on a collective ritual of prestige maintenance. Outlets construct their definitive quarterback power rankings, slap fancy analytical logos on the graphic, and distribute them to millions of fans who assume these lists are forged in the fires of impartial film study. But when the latest tier lists dropped and revealed Caleb Williams sitting dead in the middle of the pack at number 13, the illusion shattered completely. To suggest there are 12 better signal callers on planet Earth right now isn't just a flawed evaluation. It is a profound exercise in willful ignorance. It is the sound of an entire industry clearing its throat, adjusting its tie, and desperately trying to protect a preconceived narrative that was rendered obsolete months ago. To understand the sheer magnitude of this disrespect, you have to look at what Caleb actually put on paper during his sophomore campaign. We are talking about a player who threw for 3,942 passing yards while maintaining a staggering 27-7 touchdown to interception ratio. In an era where defensive coordinators are disguising coverage shells at historical rates specifically designed to confuse young quarterbacks, Williams sliced through modern defensive architecture with surgical precision. He didn't just manage games, he carried the entire weight of the franchise on his shoulders week in and week out, demonstrating a level of command that usually takes veterans a decade to master. Yet, the raw statistical volume only tells half the story. The true mark of elite quarterback play is not what happens when the pocket is clean and the script is running smoothly in the first quarter. It is what happens when everything breaks down and the stadium is shaking. Last season, Caleb Williams delivered 7 separate fourth-quarter comebacks. 7 times he took the field with the game on the line, the clock ticking down, and 0 margin for error, and 7 times he walked off the field a winner. That isn't luck, nor is it a statistical fluke. That is rare, unshakable poise that money cannot buy and coaching cannot fake. So why does the mainstream consensus refuse to grant him his crown? Why are analysts so eager to slide fringe starters, game managers, and aging veterans ahead of a player who consistently performs at his absolute best when the pressure is at its absolute highest? The answer lies in the psychological phenomenon of confirmation bias. Before Caleb ever put on a professional helmet, a noisy contingent of draft evaluators declared that his playstyle wouldn't translate to the Sundays of the NFL. They labeled him reckless, reliant on backyard football, and incapable of operating within the structure of an elite offensive system. Now, even as the tape proves those evaluations completely wrong, the establishment is trapped in its own anchoring bias. Admitting that Caleb Williams is a top 10 quarterback right now requires these pundits to publicly admit they were wrong in their draft profiles. It forces them to concede that their rigid, outdated frameworks for evaluating young signal callers are broken. Sliding him into the teens is their safety blanket, a convenient cop-out that allows them to cling to minor statistical flaws while completely ignoring the dominant reality on the field. This brings us to the core question that will define the rest of this breakdown. Is this stubborn refusal to rank Caleb among the elite truly based on objective, cold-hearted film analysis? Or are national media evaluators simply engaged in massive coping mechanisms because they cannot stand the thought of being proven wrong? As we pull back the layers of his tape, examine his mechanics within the scheme, and stack his production directly against the league's established superstars, the answer becomes unassailably clear. The disrespect ends today. If you spend 5 minutes scrolling through social media or watching mainstream sports debate shows, you will inevitably hear the exact same bullet point repeated like a gospel truth. Caleb Williams completed only 58.1% of his passes in Season 2. To the casual box score watcher, that single number is treated as an open and shut case. Critics brandish it like a smoking gun, claiming that any quarterback hovering under 60% in the modern NFL is inherently inaccurate, mechanically inconsistent, and incapable of staying on schedule. They lump Caleb in with draft busts of the past, pointing to his low completion rate and off-target metrics as undeniable proof that he lacks the touch required to operate at an elite professional level. But relying on raw completion percentage to judge a quarterback's ball placement is like judging a book by its cover without bothering to read the actual words on the page. When you turn on the tape and perform an honest, rigorous play-by-play breakdown, the real story behind that 58.1% figure begins to crystallize. The first major factor that traditional box scores completely ignore is the deliberate use of the throwaway. Last season, Caleb faced constant pressure while operating behind an offensive line that was frequently reshuffled due to injuries. Under intense heat, many young, inexperienced quarterbacks panic. They either absorb a drive-killing sack or make a panicked, desperate throw into double coverage that results in a catastrophic turnover. Caleb, however, possesses a rare internal clock and situational awareness. When a play breaks down completely and his options are exhausted, he routinely maneuvers outside the pocket and fires the ball harmlessly out of bounds. On paper, that smart, tactical decision registers as an incompletion, dinging his completion percentage just as harshly as a 10-yard overthrow into the dirt. In reality, he is protecting the football, avoiding negative yardage, and preserving field position. He effectively traded sacks for throwaways, taking care of the football at the cost of his own box score aesthetics. Furthermore, context regarding actual ball placement is crucial. A significant chunk of Caleb's incompletions were not wild, uncatchable misses, but rather calculated high-velocity throws into ultra-tight windows where only his receiver had a chance to make a play. When you examine the advanced accuracy metrics that track off-target throws while filtering out dropped passes, throwaways, spikes, and receiver route errors, his actual inaccuracy rate looks drastically different from the surface narrative pushed by national pundits. The second, and arguably most important driver of his low completion rate lies in the structural philosophy of head coach Ben Johnson's offensive scheme. Ben Johnson did not come to Chicago to call a soft, conservative, horizontal offense packed with mindless screen passes and 3-yard dump-offs designed to artificially inflate his quarterback's stats. Johnson's system is an aggressive, intermediate to deep vertical attack that aggressively attacks the intermediate seams and deep corridors of the defense. In this offense, Caleb was asked to make high difficulty, high reward throws downfield on a consistent basis. An offense built on vertical shots naturally yields a lower raw completion percentage than a check down heavy scheme, but it generates massively superior explosive plays per drive. During the early stretches of the season, as Caleb and his receiving corps were still building chemistry in Johnson's intricate system, subtle miscommunications occurred. A receiver running a route 2 yards too shallow, a tight end missing a landmark against zone coverage, or a split-second delay on a deep post can turn a big play into an incomplete pass. Ben Johnson himself acknowledged this reality, emphasizing that hitting their target completion metrics is a collective responsibility involving route detail, receiver landmarks, and precise timing across the entire unit. When you isolate Caleb's true misses from throwaways, dropped passes, and deep vertical shots, his underlying accuracy is not only solid, it is capable of powering an elite offense. The 58.1% stat is a lazy surface level critique, and as we pivot to his advanced efficiency metrics, the narrative crumbles entirely. Once you move past the surface level completion percentage and dive into the advanced efficiency metrics, Caleb Williams' performance shifts from impressive to elite. To truly measure a quarterback's impact, NFL analytics departments look at expected points added, or EPA, per dropback, a metric that measures how effectively a signal caller drives offensive output on a play-by-play basis. When evaluating Caleb on in-rhythm dropbacks within structure, he ranked second in the entire NFL, trailing only Drake Maye among young passers. When the play operates on schedule and the timing matches the footwork, Caleb is not merely competent, he is lethal. Combine that structure-based efficiency with his historic ball security and the picture becomes even clearer. Going multi-game stretches without throwing a single interception, Caleb has demonstrated a level of decision-making rare for a sophomore quarterback, maintaining an elite touchdown-to-interception balance that keeps his team in every single contest. That balance between aggression and control reveals itself most vividly when the game is on the line in the fourth quarter. Consider his masterclass drive against the Green Bay Packers with under 2 minutes remaining and no timeouts to spare. Trailing by 4 points against a defense dialing up complex blitz packages, Caleb did not flinch. On a crucial 3rd and 8 from his own 25, he stood firm in a collapsing pocket, manipulated the single high safety with his eyes, and delivered an absolute strike down the seam between 3 defenders. 2 plays later, under heavy pressure from an unblocked edge rusher, he broke a sack attempt, improvised outside the pocket, and pointed his receiver toward the back corner of the end zone, dropping a 40-yard dime into a bucket for the winning touchdown. It was not a fluke, it was a textbook demonstration of ice-cold execution against one of the top defensive units in football, proving that when the lights are brightest, Caleb elevates his play to match the moment. To fully understand why leaving Caleb out of the top 10 is pure copium, you have to stack his sophomore numbers directly alongside established veteran quarterbacks who are routinely lauded by the national media. Look at Jared Goff, Jordan Love, or Trevor Lawrence. Goff operates in one of the cleanest offensive environments in the league, benefiting from a dominant run game and an elite offensive line. Yet Caleb matched or surpassed Goff's EPA per dropback outside of play action while carrying a far heavier creation burden. Compare him to Jordan Love, whose volatile high-risk throws led to far more turnover-worthy plays despite similar passing volume. Or Trevor Lawrence, who continues to receive top 10 passes from pundits despite putting up lower touchdown rates and higher interception numbers over a similar span. Caleb produced nearly 4,000 passing yards and 27 touchdowns with just 7 interceptions while leading 7 fourth-quarter comebacks. Stacking those totals against any quarterback currently slotted in that 8 to 12 range makes it undeniably clear Caleb isn't chasing those quarterbacks. He has already passed them on the film. The root of this systemic disrespect isn't found on the coach's film. It is planted deep within the media ecosystems of Bristol, New York, and Los Angeles. Sports media is an industry driven by momentum and narrative anchoring. Before Caleb Williams took a single snap as a professional, a loudest in-the-room faction of draft analysts decided his style was too volatile for Sunday football, labeling him an off-script gambler who relied on backyard heroics rather than disciplined operating system play. When a player shatters those initial pre-draft projections, mainstream pundits rarely step up to the podium and admit they misjudged the prospect. Instead, they anchor themselves to those early negative takes, quietly moving the goalposts and hunting down isolated box score flaws like a sub 60% completion rate to validate their outdated narratives. Ranking him 13th isn't a measured reflection of his production, it is psychological insurance, a transparent, self-serving cop-out designed to protect media reputations from an inconvenient truth. Adding fuel to this media coping cycle is the lazy, reflexively parroted line that Caleb is merely a system quarterback, riding the coattails of head coach Ben Johnson. Pundits love to credit Johnson's brilliant offensive design, play calling sequence, and elite motion concepts for every success the unit achieves, completely stripping Caleb of his personal agency and execution. But anyone who understands offensive architecture knows a system is only as lethal as the mind pulling the trigger. Ben Johnson's playbook demands rapid pre-snap processing, hyper-precise footwork, and aggressive tight window throws downfield. Far from being a passive passenger, Caleb is the engine driving the machine. Johnson didn't simplify or dumb down his scheme to hide his young signal caller. He unlocked its most dangerous, aggressive, vertical chapters precisely because he had a physical and cerebral phenom capable of making those reads and executing those throws. While abstract media power rankings push artificial narratives to generate clicks, the opinion that actually matters, the verdict inside NFL front offices and film rooms, tells a radically different story. Defensive coordinators tasked with stopping Caleb Williams do not treat him like the 13th best quarterback in football. They construct game plans around him with absolute reverence and visible anxiety. On tape, opposing coaches do not see a raw, system-bound passer struggling with accuracy. They see a nightmare, dual-threat cheat code who possesses the arm talent to carve up coverage from structure and the spatial awareness to break down a pass rush and create off-script magic when everything collapses. When the guys who study all 250 snaps of tape every single week view Caleb as an absolute problem, you realize media rankings aren't reflecting real football, they're just protecting fragile egos. As we look ahead, the boundary between a great quarterback and an untouchable icon comes down to structural refinement. Ben Johnson has publicly set the bar at a lofty 70% completion rate for the upcoming 2026 campaign, a baseline designed to force his third-year star into taking the easy checkdowns, mastering pre-snap adjustments, and staying in rhythm before putting on the cape. But make no mistake, that statistical mandate isn't a leash. It is the final blueprint to turn a dynamic playmaker into an unplayable superstar. With another full off-season spent mastering the intricacies of this offense, the game is slowing down dramatically for Williams. If he pairs his natural off-script brilliance with higher baseline efficiency, he won't just hit Johnson's target. He will completely blow past it and shatter any remaining media resistance. The evidence from the tape, the advanced metrics, and the locker room consensus all point to a singular, undeniable truth. Caleb Williams is not a project, he is not a flash in the pan, and he is certainly not the 13th best quarterback in the NFL. He is a game-altering, clutch-performing phenom who has already proven he can carry a franchise, out-execute elite defensive coordinators, and outplay the very veterans pundits use to rank above him. Clinging to surface-level box score metrics while ignoring his game-winning drives, elite in-rhythm efficiency, and pure arm talent is no longer a valid analytical critique. It is pure, unadulterated copium from evaluators who refuse to admit they were wrong. Caleb Williams is already a top 10 quarterback in football today, and by the time this season ends, the national media won't have any choice left but to put him in the top 5. Now I want to hear from you down in the comments. Drop your top 10 NFL quarterback list right now. Where does Caleb sit on your board, and which established starter are you comfortable taking him over today? If you enjoyed this film breakdown and want more real football analysis without the media fluff, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.